Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Um, it's been quite a day. I won't get into too much of my own personal stuff. Not that I would not like to. It's just one of those things that I do think that I should get more information. I will share this is that I got some lab work done and there's some health concerns. So I'm going to go to a specialist to get some more information. So I think it's really wise to not to well, first of all, I get to practice what I preach, but also to not necessarily jump ahead to things until they're actually there. It's kind of like the bridge. I think the phrase is we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And some of us who are prone to worry and anxiety will actually try to cross the bridge before we're there. So, so tonight, and I guess this segues into what I had planned tonight. A week from tonight, there'll be an election, it appears. And I think a lot of us have stress and anxiety about that. I think that we're worried about the future. We wonder, what is our life going to be like with, the same president or a different president or same governor or a different governor or other elected officials. Yeah, I think it's important to have some concern, but what I wanted to focus on is how much concern do we want? Like, how much do we want to make our happiness based on that? And I've been at least over 50 years old, and my experience as a kid, I never thought of politics. I might have thought about the Cold War or the war in Vietnam or some political things, but the reality is I didn't really get affected by it. And maybe my parents were affected, but I don't think they were that much. They might have watched things on the news. I'm going to turn something off. I jumped the gun here. I need to turn off the computer, which will make less sound there. Thank you. So, if you had a pie chart and certain wedges were areas of concern, and what are the things in your life that are going to bring you joy and determine your happiness? Is the biggest slice really politics, like whatever happens in this election? Like 25% of your happiness is going to be based on that? Maybe. Do we want it even bigger? How do I do this? A bigger wedge? I guess that's up to us. We can make it a very small slice if we wanted to. We could focus on what brings us joy in our own neighborhood, what joy we get from our own family, the joy of seeing a sunset. Like, I don't think sunsets will go away too quickly, or flowers. And even if we get some political system we do not like, how quick is that going to take place? And is there checks and balances there? A lot of us may be concerned about civil unrest. Yeah, that's a concern. What can we do about it? I can't fix the riots in New York City or in Philadelphia, it appears. I can only see them. And just for balance, in the olden days, before internet, before quick forms of transfer of information, we would not have learned about that. We may not even know about what the president was doing every other day. Yeah, no. You would feel a ripple effect from some of these things, but not so quickly. So are we stressing ourselves out, maybe with too much information, too much media, too much concern, like over concern? Maybe. Have I done that? Probably more than I should. I try to let go and say, hey, I'm going to get back to my life now. Enough of that. But I think that it draws me in. Curiosity. It's a false sense of control. Boy, it sounds like I'll be critical when I say this, but polls and things like that, is that a false sense of control, like we can know the outcome before we know the outcome? That didn't work so well last time. Mail-in voting, I think that's interesting. Is there a sense of control? It brings up our control issues. Do we trust the mail service? Do we trust the box? Can we just put the thing in the box there and trust that it'll get there? I think if we want peace, we have to let go of control. It's just a given. Yeah, whether we have a personal problem or a public problem, we are so best when we surrender to God and say, God, please help me to do your holy will. Whether this is who should I vote for, or how do you want me to respond to after the election? Do you want me to spend weeks of obsessing on waiting for the ballots to be counted, or do you want me to live my life unencumbered? Early Christianity talks about detachment. Psychology hints at that as well. This idea that we are attached so strongly to what we want, it kind of makes us miserable. If we let go and don't try to want anything, which sounds really weird, but we'll probably be happier than if we have a list, a menu, and I want everything I want on the list, and I hand it to God, or I don't even hand it to God. I just try to rule my life based on what's on the list. I want, and then we don't get it, and then we're really disappointed. Or we try to control our way through the world, trying to get what we want on the list. And we're not going to have as much peace as if we surrender. The word surrender has links with medicine. The word patient, like to be a patient, like where did that word come from? Well, it's the what I want to say. It's not the science. It's the realm of etymology. The word patient, and that's the origins of words. To be patient means to surrender. To be a patient, well, I'll go back. It was a good phrase. To be patient is to surrender. So what it means is to surrender to the process of, I'm going to get the lab results when I get the lab results, or to have to wait till something else unfolds, or to go through the process. To be patient in traffic means to go through the process. To be patient with America, say like, you don't get the outcome you want. So 4 years of which you didn't get wanted, well, now you have another opportunity 4 years later to vote again. From there, to be patient means to suffer long with whatever it is that you don't necessarily like. How can I be joyous in the midst of that? Well, not by focusing on it a lot of times, or focus. That's how we focus on it. Yeah, to be patient is to surrender to the process. To be a patient, to like a physician, is to trust that physician to do what that physician says. And there's challenges with that these days. We have the internet to help guide us to look up the information for ourselves, and we can't really be our own doctor, but we can ask good questions and maybe get a number of opinions on things. But ultimately, and this is the point I'm making, is to have any kind of physician-patient relationship, you surrender to the physician. As Christians or as people who are trying to discover how to operate in this world, we will do best when we're surrendered to a physician of our souls. We will do best when we trust someone else to help us. And we trust the process. So, is this election the end of the world? No. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe there's something that'll happen where we'll all just cease to exist a week from now. But right now, we're all living and breathing, and we may not get what we want, but we, well, there's a little phrase, we get what we get and we don't throw a fit. That was a mother saying that to a child that I picked up. How do we not throw a fit? Is by surrender, by trusting the process. America, if we are guided by the Constitution, the mechanism for how government works, we just have to trust this process, and we don't always have to be totally healthy to get well. Maybe we need to go through something so that something later can be in that. Yeah, I think that's what gets us through. Let's see, I had a list. This is the first time I decided to actually pre-advertise, so it was kind of, because I think it helps people. I think if you're subscribed, you will get an invite. And not that I want to pester you, not that I'm actually humbled that people would stop their life at 6 o'clock on Tuesday or whenever I get to it, 6 o'clock, 6:15, to do this. But I think people are watching later. How do we apply what we've been learning in the 12 steps to the election? Well, step 1 is we're powerless over the results. 2, we come to believe that a God, a power greater than ourselves, can restore me to sanity, could restore our nation to sanity if we wanted it. And maybe a lot of people are praying for the nation. Maybe a lot of people, regardless of their understanding of God, are reaching up to this higher power, who I believe is God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But God, in his love for mankind, might have mercy on us and help us. Let's see. Turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him. I'm turning my will of what I want to have happen for this country to his will. America as a whole could ask God, help us all. We're powerless over our own problems. We have, and again, I'll list the problems. We have economic disparity amongst different people, maybe class problems, race problems, problems with police officers and civilians, and violence for sure, anger for sure, fears around health and COVID, doctors and nurses being overwhelmed, healthcare providers like ourselves being kind of overwhelmed. The list goes on, domestic violence, marital problems. So what do? We raise our hand and say, please help me. And no more Erik's will, but your will be done. From there, we only can have this power that's come to us if we stay surrendered. So the moment I get my grip on something, the moment I try to have my will be done, or selfishness, and selfishness could manifest itself in fear, by me just even having an argument with someone wanting to get my will or my way across rather than just listening, surrendering, trusting. Yeah, I think our country can be healed, but it can take some time to heal. Um, just listening. It says that it's sanity, and I think the 12-step people suggested this phrase. It's insanity to do the same thing over and over and expect different results. So if I'm putting down the media, so brace yourself. I do still watch them, but if we think the media will save us, not sure that's the solution. Getting more information is maybe helpful, but talks with, if there's dialogue between two people that really help us know what it's like to be on the other side, say like to be Black, to be a person of color, to be a minority, just watching someone and hear their story could be useful. Probably less likely to be argumentative, but I think real life examples where I'm talking with someone and asking them what they think, what they feel, what is their beliefs. Just listening. Don't have to fix anything. Don't have to convince them of my understanding of the situation. And I think someone holy has suggested that there's some dark forces around politics. I kind of believe it. How so? Well, let's compare what I say a lot about addiction. People can be pretty well put together, work hard, got good grades, or maybe didn't get good grades, but worked hard to get a good job. They could work hard to be a good athlete. They could do all these things. And then addiction comes and they try harder to not use their drug of choice. Might as well list them be alcohol or drugs, prescription medications, sex, spending, gambling, food, work. Their life is unmanageable. Oh, I'm sorry. I kind of lost my train of thought talking about, these people that are so with it, how is it that then this thing kicks their butt? Maybe it's because it's a power greater than themselves. Maybe there's something spiritual there. It makes logical sense to me. Like if pills could have fixed all these things, we would have seen that. If hard work and sweat and hard work would have, no, we would have seen that. No, people still die. It seems that if they admit powerlessness over this, that it gets better. So let's take reasonable, rational people. And as soon as something political ends up being in the discussion, even if they share the same political persuasion, it seems that some force takes over. And they become very passionate about their views. Passionate, which could make them arrogant, self-righteous, black and white thinking, stubborn, judgmental, condescending. And all that is spiritual death. I mean, that isn't good for any of us. And resentful, So, and then it's to the point where we can't even talk with each other. I listened to someone saying we can't even talk with each other about this. So why wouldn't that be something spiritual? And why wouldn't that be something that could be benefited by a 12-step process of acknowledging that politics is greater than me? And that while I may need to engage at them at some level, it's like money. Getting rid of all money may not be the solution for most of us, but say like we have a spending addiction or an eating addiction. Well, I just will never eat. Well, it doesn't work that way. Eating is a really good example. Like, how is it that we can be so smart, so put together, and then something like compulsive overeating or compulsive undereating just gets the better of us. It just, and not to be too dramatic, but it kills us, even though we have the best technology, the best science, all that. And we think information will save us, but maybe it's as simple as I'm surrendering over my compulsive overeating and I can't stop. God, help me. So if we do this, God, I'm surrendering my compulsive obsession with politics and worrying and stressing. And I don't know if anybody's gloating these days, but my life's unmanageable. So then we humbly ask, what part do I have in this? How am I self-righteous, arrogant, holding on to my own ideas? Don't look in any black and white thinking in any way how the other side could be right or wrong. Am I reactive? Maybe I have a good message, but my limbic system is just screaming. Or I shut down. Here's the other side of politics, is that I'm so afraid to say anything because I don't want my house burned down. That sounds dramatic, but say like I don't want my house burned down. I'm still influenced by it. I'm just the other direction. It's kind of like anorexia is to overeating. Well, now I'm like politically anorexic. I don't want to have to deal with any of this stuff. Just make it go away. And that's what's fascinating. And boy, this sounds judgmental, but I don't think 100% of the people even vote. And I would think that a lot of the people would be concerned about which way something goes this election and that we would see higher rates of voting. But there's probably going to be a large group that goes, I can't vote. I don't have a good idea of what to choose. On that, I think it's probably good to pray about it and figure out what level of participation, maybe that is their recovery, that they were too into politics and now they're just letting someone else decide what happens to the country. That is similar to, I just won't have a discussion with family members or someone that I care about that might differ from me. Why? Because I just don't want it to go haywire. I don't want it to go wacky. Is that God's will? I don't know. Maybe it is God's will to just be silent. But maybe it is God's will to have a conversation and just, yeah, I love that. Thank you, Kervin. That's been on my heart a lot, and we'll talk about that. That's like a, so what Kervin says is Philippians 4:5, King James Version, let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. The Lord is near, helps our response to provoking situations. Yeah, I love that. And that's actually not the verse I was looking for. That's, the verse, and I mean haunt in a good way. Something will just be there, and be moderate in all things. And maybe that's the same verse, but different translation, but it could be, wow, let your moderation be known unto all men. Interestingly enough, I was working with someone who was struggling with anger, and I let him struggle a little bit to come up with what is the opposite of anger. What is the character defect that's yes, is mildness. And I was working on anger for a long time until I just looked in a little book, and there's this, you have the passions on one side. So greed, the opposite of greed is liberality. Of lust is chastity, and chastity doesn't mean just not having sex. It means holistic, actually. The word is a lovely word, holistic, meaning to have sex outside of the context of marriage would be unchaste, according to the Christian faith, because it's taken out of the context of holistic, of that marital union. To go into too many depths might get kind of interesting, but I'll share this, is that if we just want pleasure without procreation, it starts to get splintered. If people just want body parts without the whole experience, if we just want the body parts without the person, it's splintered. So chastity is that experience of sexuality which is godly and not fractured. So I'm starting to get really dry here. Hold on. So water. So in recovery, instead of just trying to fight, don't be greedy, don't be greedy, don't be greedy, we pray for liberality, that trust that there's enough money for me to give to the poor, not be grasping and stingy. Pride, instead of trying not to be prideful, praying for humility. So instead of trying to fight politics with politics, trying not to be obsessed with that, Curvin's on the right path here, is that we aim towards where we want to go, and we can't do that in our own strength, so we ask God to gift that to us. And that's very 12-step-ish, and it's very early Christianity, that these passions aren't to be eradicated. Passions are an unnatural state of a natural desire. So healthy eating would have been for sustenance and some pleasure. I mean, because there is taste buds and apples could taste good. When it's so decadent, where it just tastes too good, it's at the level of a drug, and then I overeat or obsess about eating, that's the unnatural state of gluttony. It harms us. That's why these are called the passions, because it's suffering. Now, again, people think, well, it's good to be passionate. Well, it's just the context that we understand passionate in this way, but in this context, it's harming. So gentleness would be, and mildness are definitely the opposites of anger. And I'm a hypocrite when I share this, but when I'm angry, my message may be okay. It's just the delivery. So how can I make myself not be angry? It'd be like trying to make people not riot. I think, on a side note, we riot or we get angry. Well, rioting, it's other thing, but protesting is good. But when it's over the top, screaming and yelling, the problem is our message may not really be heard that well. And in fact, I know neurologically, our limbic system goes boing, 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 and we just check out. And I think that's what happens if we get too animated in political discussion. The media, unfortunately, plays to our limbic system, so it sucks us in. But the problem is, if they did something more moderate, we might actually fall asleep to it. So we pray for moderation. We pray for the ability to share the message without anger. A lot of us would go, well, I just assume not say anything, and that may be okay, but we may need to have a moderate response to things. And it doesn't mean we can't be bold and say, like, for instance, I believe abortion is wrong. I believe it's murder of an unborn child. Someone else may have a differing belief that believes that it's a woman's right to her body, that it's really not a fetus. It's just a clump of tissue. The fascinating thing, which would start a political discussion, is that someone who's pro-life would say, well, how is it that when a woman is pregnant and she's so wanting this child, that this child is in her womb and it's always considered a child? No one comes up to her who's maybe 3 months along and says, how's the clump of tissue doing? No one says that. It's really contextual that, oh, it's a baby, I can't wait. And they do everything to protect that baby. But if it then somehow magically doesn't become a baby, if you don't want the baby. And what's disturbing is that it seems like almost after birth, you can do an abortion and it's still not a baby, as long as you deem that not a baby. I think that this is a good discussion to have. I think it's a good legal discussion to have for people to sort these things out. If we carry one of the message, either side carries the message so immoderate is probably a good word, or so violent. Um, the person says, "I'm done." They pull the shade down. I'm done discussing this, and I've just lost them. So I'm saying, I'm predicting maybe there will be a number of people that get skilled at how to build communication skills between people and to do negotiations and to be able to get resolution. This is a positive note. If people can talk, and I don't mean any offense to either side on anything, but if people can use skilled communication with a hostage, terrorist, knowing how they operate to try to save lives, we should learn how to communicate so that it saves lives. In fact, that may be Providence speaking through me. I mean this in a humble way. Never occurred to me that the violence in the media, like people screaming and yelling at each other, not listening to one another, could actually be violent in causing deaths in our society. Whether it's the pandemic, the people come off so strong that people won't listen to the safety measures, or if people haven't listened and done a dialogue format like a town hall, like if we can have town hall discussions with differing ideas with presidents, why not have that for racism in our country instead of protests? We know it's a serious problem. Why not have dialoguing with police officers and everybody gets to hear their story? I think it's really healing. And of course, I'm a therapist. So, and 12 steps is very similar to that because you're just listening without commenting. You don't have to agree to benefit from someone else's story. So we're praying these defects of character away. So the reality is that my response to the situation, I had a health concern, or the politics that's going to happen, is not the thing that's hurting me. It would be my response to it. How do I have a better response? My only hope is go to God. And it sounds preachy, but I really believe it with all my heart that because there'll always be something bigger than you can handle. Pandemic's a good example of that. A health crisis, some financial wipeout. 12 steps started, and boy, I talk a lot about 12 steps. Eventually, the Tuesday Night Comfort will leave 12 step, but we'll get through the steps. In fact, I should speed it up a bit. But I'll say this, is that it was discovered during the Great Depression. It was discovered during some very difficult times. So step 4 is a moral inventory of ourselves, looking at our defects of character. Just to reiterate them one more time, selfishness, which is I have a plan for how I want everything. Fear, which definitely fits this thing because I'm afraid I'm not going to get what I want. Resentment means I hold on to something from the past, and dishonesty. So I pray for truth. So from there, step 5 is to share our inventory, our life, our defects of character with another human being. This can really, really, really help us. This is not a time to be alone. This is a time to reach out to a trusted friend, a pastor, a priest, your neighbor, people you trust, and get some kind of connection with them. Let them know some of the things you're struggling with. I do think occasionally there is overburdening people with too many problems, but it seems to be true that if you share a burden, that burden is lightened for both of you, and a joy shared is twice the joy. So I do feel a little bit of a burden when I hear some really tough stuff. I think I want to feel burdened in a good way. I don't want to go, well, that's not my cancer, or that's not my financial loss or a job. No, I heard things today like, wow, that's just enough to be difficult. Um, yeah, it's just very difficult. So I'm taking more of the difficult situations, just the triage. But I just have to give it to God. Have to pray and say, okay, that hopefully that will lighten their burden. Step 6 is to become entirely ready to have God remove the defects of character. Well, this is like a micro step. Before there was 12, there was only 4. And the reality is, who doesn't want to get rid of it? If you just said, this is the cause of my problems, then I need to get rid of it. The AA book says selfishness, self-centeredness, that is the root of our troubles. It also says that alcohol was just but a symptom. That we had to get rid of self, and we could not get rid of self without his aid. This is in chapter 5. So really getting rid of self is the answer to our problems. Well, it's not the end in and of itself. I got to decrease so that God can increase. As long as I'm trying everything in my own strength, it's not going to work so well. 7 is humbly ask God to remove the defects of character. So this is such a simple step. It's I don't know if it's neglected. It's just that there's a lot of hearts of the program. One heart is you got to surrender. You got to let go of control. 2 is you got to really give up your will and your plan. You can do a moral inventory, but it does no good if you really don't surrender it to God and say, God, please help me change these defects. So 7 is really a heart of the program, a key, I guess. It's I am saying, God, I am too selfish. I want what I want here. May your will be done. Or I'm too angry. Please grant me humility and moderation. God, I am too gluttonous. It's as simple as this. I just overeat for stress. Please grant me some semblance of temperance is the word for that. Means moderate eating, to get moderate pleasure from eating. Laziness or sloth, the opposite of that is diligence. Covetousness or envy, believe it or not, and this may be a bigger factor than what we think in the civil unrest, is that, boy, do I open a can of worms, but I'll just say this. Here's one thought, is that, and I've heard this through other speakers, so these ideas aren't original. If there's a number of people that, for whatever reason, don't have a lot of money, don't at least feel like they had a fair start in life, feel that there's privilege amongst other people or not. I mean, that could be white privilege. It could be the people that are rich privilege. It could be where you live, whether you live in a suburb, you're born there, or versus an inner city. And I talked to a fine person today who was talking about how he saw that sports was his ticket out to do something. And we talked a little bit about what causes some people to just rise up and say, I don't want these circumstances, I'm going to work harder. And others to kind of feel like that's not fair, which actually is touted in some so-called history books, which helps promote socialism. If you want to understand the roots of socialism, it's that, is you have a number of people feeling something's not fair. I have an idea. We'll let the government decide what's going to be fair or not and spread it all out. I know that's simplistic, but it does seem to be the way it is. And on that note, say like people who have a faith tradition, I think it's really important to know that wherever socialism has been, they eliminate religion. And the reason is, I think, well, first of all, it replaces religion. Second of all, where I'm being dramatic, antichrist, we think anti like a fighting. Anti also means in place of Christ. So I think socialism has this aspect that's in place of Christianity, that we are going to solve the world's problems through government. Now, I also think capitalism at some level could have that aspect too, and that any kind of political thing. Um, but envy, getting to the punchline here, is happiness, contentment. If I pray, and I've had envy in my own life, I've had people have envy about all kinds of things and their bodies and what they didn't have, and, you know, and it's addictive in the sense that it's never going to satisfy. You can never be envious enough to get what you want. It's just insatiable. When they pray, God, please grant me to be content with whatever circumstances I have, God comes to them and starts to give them contentment. And that's what I'll be praying for, is contentment in these days to come with the election. Yeah, that would be a really important word, is to be content with whatever happens. Because if we are putting our faith and trust in princes and sons of men in whom there is no salvation, we end up having troubles. Yeah. If we put our faith in God, who is not going to go away, who has been there through countless troubles in human history, why wouldn't we go to him in those times of affliction and times of difficulty? So one approach is, it's going to turn out okay either way. And if we see this as, I'm surrendering this to God's will, I don't know how, I don't think God's will, my praying a certain, I'm not even praying actually to have it be a certain way. I'm praying, God, your will be manifested in America. I do know that God wants us healed. So please help heal us, help humble us. So there's very safe prayers, but the prayers aren't, please make this person win or that person. No, I don't know what's good for America. I kind of have more of an idea what's not good for America or good for me. And so I'll just say I'm pretty pro-life in terms of anything that gives people freedom and life, I'm into. And there could be difference of opinions of what that looks like. So then we make a list of the people we have harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Are there people we have harmed? Sure there is. We can't help it. So a 12-stepper is going to be doing that. What about harms that I think I haven't harmed? Like if I've thought evil thoughts towards people in the media or evil thoughts towards people in politics, that's a harm. People go, oh, Erik, stop being so over the board, saintly. Here's the deal, is an alcoholic or any addict can be so wrapped around the axle about how bad this is in the world and how bad that is in the world, and then this and then that, on and on and on. What's the result? We end up being angry, and then we drink. We lose our focus and we lose power, because God gives grace to the humble, but he's opposed to the proud. So we do this because not only is it the right and pleasing thing to do, but it saves us. So we would need to make amends for those people that we've had spiteful thoughts towards, and by the way, I think we're somewhat at fault, but there are demonic energies, boy, I'm going out on a limb, that entice us to be so mad at these people. And I use the words these people on purpose, because we begin to categorize, and then eventually we begin to think of them as objects, that they're not real people. You really can't harm people if you don't first objectify them. Yeah. You can't, yeah. I mean, if you see everybody as having been created in the image and likeness of God, that they have a right to live, that you want just as good things for them as you would want for yourself, that would be a good thing. So we make amends. So direct amends in step 9, we make direct amends except when to do so would injure them or others. So there's a mouthful there, but what that means is amending, I'm not harming. And if somehow going to someone and apologizing is going to harm them worse, then we don't do that. We make indirect amends. So we first try to make amends to all those around us, trying to have short accounts, no grudges. Some things are better left unsaid. Say, like, I was judgmental of someone. I'm not going to go and say, I've been judging you for years. Please forgive me. No, I would just start to pray and ask God to grant me kindness towards them, maybe do kindness in secret behind them. So pray for your enemies. Love those who persecute you. Pray everything you'd want for yourself to be given to that person. That's also in the AA book. It's also practicing Christianity. Here's the gist of it is that we only love God as much as the person we love least. So if I get to have to give an account for my life and God points and says, look, this is how much you love this person, that's where your real faith is. And it's like, oh God, can't you grade on a curve? Can't you do this? He'll say to me, Jesus told you. Jesus will say to me, what profit or benefit do you get by loving those who love you? Love your enemies. So that's where it's really going to be. So do we have an opportunity to consider some people enemies? Perhaps. I think a higher level of functioning would be to see that our thoughts are really our enemies, and that really we're all in this boat together. But say, and another way to think of the enemy is anybody just working against you. So if I'm working towards one goal and the person's working against me, I don't have to hate them to have them be an enemy, but they're not working with me. In fact, I'm not supposed to hate them. I'm supposed to love them. Does it mean we're buddy-buddy? Perhaps not, but it would be trying to do good and help them, however God directs. Will this help me? It will. Will this help me get through not only the pandemic? Because you can be mad at the people that told you to wear a mask, don't wear a mask, all that, and hold a grudge, Yeah, there's so many people to be mad at and upset by. And that's where life's short. We want to be free from that. Steps 10 and 11 and 12, I think we should save for another time. And I'm debating what I'm going to do on Tuesday night next week. I'm inclined to keep it anyway, and people don't have to view me. They could view election results. But I also want to be there for people as if this is really that important. But I think continuing on how do I put it? Continuing on as usual would be good. Now I might have a health issue that I need to attend to, and I might be not as able to serve. And that's why I decided to do this. It's like I want to carry on as usual. So I appreciate your prayers, your concerns. And the reason I'm not necessarily getting into it until I know more, and then the thing is, even if I did, I don't want my life to be totally about something I'm going through. So I'm sure, yeah, and it's a really good example is when things happen, we may be shocked at first, but then we learn to adapt. It's how we are. Same thing with the election. And those that felt that they didn't get the candidate they wanted last time, I would say a lot of the prediction was that, at least from the media, maybe that's made up, was that their life was going to go down the tubes. It was going to be horrible. This was the end of the world, etc. And one has to be their own judge to ask, well, did that really happen? Yes, we've had some bad things happen in America, but really, did all the things that were predicted by them happen? And if we don't get the candidate we want on this next months to come, because it could be a month accounting, how are we going to respond to it? Are we going to respond to this with gentleness and moderation and hope, and to work within what we have to work within, or are we going to have our lives be devastated? And all of this, from a therapist's point of view, is actually probably going to teach us how to be more mature in handling things, rather than just fighting for what we want. Yeah, I could see if it flipped back and forth, we would learn to work together as a team, because we won't get the things we need to get done if we don't start to set aside the it's so overused as a phrase, but the partisan identity, all that stuff, and let's just go to, what are your beliefs about this? How do we best solve, like, COVID, and infrastructure of roads, and where should money be spent? And I'm part of a couple of organizations where there's boards, and the reality is people don't always agree, and that's the way it's meant to be. Is that if everybody agreed, that might be a creepier movie, like the Stepford Wives, or some creepy society, than if everybody agreed. Not everybody agrees in a family. Like, I use the metaphor that you have, and I wanted to make sure no one saw that as, I always see women as more democratic because they are more soft and helping the underdog, and men as being more Republican, because there are just as many the opposite, where the woman is hard working, get off your butt. Maybe I'm misrepresenting the other side. I don't care if you are sick, you're going to go to school. Where the dad may go, he's sick, don't make him go to school. But then she says he has to learn, to take responsibility. I don't want him to end up on welfare and be a victim. But he says, but there is a time to take care of oneself. So that polarizing, is the problem, not so much the beliefs. So anyway, well, thanks for the people that were there and the people that shared. And yeah, I wish you well in your journey, and always let us know what you like, what you don't like so much. In fact, that's probably, good to see Aaron. That's probably, I could go on, but that's probably helpful to have a spirit of, what can I do better? And we'll talk about that. Either we'll talk about 10, 11, and 12, which is pages 84 to 88. And there's a phrase in there that says, what could I do better? And this is kind of a prayer. It's a very powerful, open-ended, what could I do better in this situation? So anyway, I'm getting a little message, so I'm going to stay. So Aaron, we weren't on any pages today per se, but we covered 4-ish, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 9 in short way, which is chapter 5 and 6 of the AA Big Book. And specifically 10, 11, and 12 are basically pages 84 to 88. You will find that is so simple. If we do that every day, it's kind of like a scanning of how to look at life and how to pray in an effective way. And that's why when we wake up on November 2nd, I think, That's the math. Or whatever day we wake up that we're worried about, we would go, no, I'm taking another day that the Lord has gifted me. What is your holy will? Guide all my actions, my feelings, my thoughts. Help me to be healed in this. And then we pray for the defects of character to be removed and granting the opposing virtues. Grant me humility, patience, moderation. So may God have mercy on us all and take care of us, and we will see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.